We're now recording. Okay, so everybody, welcome to the West Shore Photography Club meeting of February 12th. Our meeting today is going to be an image review done by Chip Cain.
It's Bob.
We have 18 images.
I don't know that.
Can everybody,
Folks, please mute your
West in Wisconsin or Minnesota or
Mark, why don't you mute everybody?
yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mute all, and then Chip, you'll have to unmute yourself.
sure.
Okay. All right, so first thing I want to do is we want to go through some announcements. Our next meeting will be the February 26th, 2 weeks from today. And it's the title of the thing will be Keep Your Photography Fresh with Bert Serkin. He's the gentleman we had here a couple months ago doing the presentation on AI, so that should be real interesting. Since the last trip we've had, since the last meeting, sorry, we had one trip, and that was to Eastern State Penitentiary. And Mike, would you like to give us an update on that?
Yes, we had close to 15 people. The Maryland group was well represented. They had a good turnout for us. The venue itself was fascinating, completely fascinating. It was the Nurbex, like an urban exploration kind of thing with abandon this and abandon that. But the difference was there were long hallways and the light was tremendous. Each cell had a little section in the top that the light could come in, and a good time, I think, was had by all. It was a little chilly, but we survived it. So yeah, it was a good trip for sure.
And the Greek restaurant was good.
Oh, it was excellent. Excellent. Yeah, so it was definitely worth the ride and worth the price of admission for sure.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Now let's talk about upcoming trips. The next trip is going to be to the Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area, and I'll let Joe talk about that.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we're going to be doing that. We were scheduled to do that on Saturday, but this afternoon, Kurt Wilkie and we made a decision to move it to next Tuesday. And the reason why we did that was not because of the snow or the bad weather in that sense, but because of the wind and the clouds. And those are the two things that can absolutely ruin a trip to Middle Creek. So we moved that for the actual trip. But we are going to continue with the Thursday evening mini little workshop discussion about techniques and stuff that you might want to look out for at Middle Creek. So that'll still continue. So that is Middle Creek.
Okay, thanks a lot. A trip after that will be February 24th, and we'll be going to the Strasbourg Railway Museum. We'll be meeting there at 10 o'clock, which is about the time they open, if I remember correctly. We go there pretty much every year, and everybody seems to enjoy it. It's a nice trip. Another trip that we're looking at doing possibly is to Indian Echo Caverns. And Elaine, can you give us something about that?
Sure. Last week, Joe and I went there on a scouting trip in hopes of determining whether or not it would be a viable, suitable trip for our club. There were some concerns about lighting. There is absolutely no natural lighting down in the caverns, but there is spotlighting. So that was one of our concerns, and we wanted to experiment a little bit with different techniques for exposure in that kind of a venue. But we both came back very excited about it. It's a beautiful place. There are so many photo opportunities in the caverns with the interesting textures of the rocks and the beautiful colors. So we really had no problems with lighting because we were both using high ISOs, and high ISO is not a concern in that type of environment because there's so much structure and texture that even if there's some residual noise after denoising, it actually can enhance the textures in it. So we didn't see that as a problem at all. I was shooting at 6,400. Joe was shooting as well, very high, but I think, Joe, you said it was an average of 12,800 or something. And we were both very pleased with the output that we came back with. And in fact, Joe, if you have seen Joe's post on our Facebook club page, they are absolutely stunning images. If you haven't been there yet, I would encourage you to do so. But one of the challenges that we are undecided about is the narrowness of the passageways down in the cavern, which would preclude going with a very large group, especially in a public group tour where you would have up to 30 or more tourists blocking the aisles, so to speak. They really are very narrow. Using a tripod would be impossible. And it would be very challenging to get past tourists. So we're hoping to possibly negotiate a group rate that is affordable. But we need to know how many people will be interested, first of all, in going, because the more people that go, the lower the individual cost is going to be. The public rate is like $24, $22 for seniors. So we'd like to get a group rate and enough people interested that would bring that cost down to the individual to that amount or less. But we haven't got a feel yet for how many are interested. So in the next couple of days, we'll be sending out a survey in email to all of you with just a few very simple, basic questions to get a feel for how many would truly be interested. So if you could look for that in your email and respond, we'd appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much, Elaine. To briefly go over what some other things are coming in the future is in March, we have on March 9th, we're going to have a trip to the Gordonville mud sales. And that's something we've been doing for quite a while. On March 11th, there's going to be a Zoom meeting, and that Zoom meeting will be where we look at top images from the individuals in the club from 2023. So it's kind of like show and tell type of thing. I think that it's the first time we've tried this. I think it'll go over really well. And then on March 19th, we're going to have a trip to Maple Press, which is a bookmaker. So that would something we've never done before, and that should be really interesting. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order, as Dennis likes to say? If not, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Chip Cain so he can do the presentation, so he can do the critiques. We have 18 today, so all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Let me get my screen shared here and then in full screen mode. And oh, it's moving a little slow here. Not quite sure why it's not full screen mode. Let's try this again. There we go.
All right.
Okay. Unlike the slide, despite what it says, there is no theme. I'm assuming that you might have had a theme in the past with fog, and this just kind of snuck in on the template. At least I'm hoping there was no fog, because only one photo might have hinted at fog in here. So we'll move forward here with our first image. And radiant sundial lupin. For many, many years, I used to call this a lupine. And I was out in Glacier National Park in a field of what I thought were lupines, and happened to mention that to someone, and they corrected me. And of course, I Googled it and found out they were right. I was wrong. So lupins. which, just as a side note, happened to be in the P family, if anybody's interested. But the initial view, when you see this, is like nice. There's just a complement of colors here, the green and the blues. They're not opposite color wheel in any way, but they're kind of like sister colors. And so they just work very well. This image is basically straight on, and they have it in the center. And if you're going to do something straight on, that's where you'd want it. It's sharp in the center in here, really nice. And there's some interesting structure all the way around. When you're shooting straight on, it can be difficult when you have other items, what I would call in the way. In this case, it's just some of the plant further out because it's wider and comes to a point in the center. So it's hard to avoid this. Not terrible, but it would be interesting to see if there was a way that you could either centralize this so it's more even around it, if you're going to do a straight on shot like this. But again, I don't see it critical. The background is nice and diffused, different shades of green. But it just is a nice picture. I was about ready to say the word comfortable, but I don't see it as a comfortable picture because its structure adds a little bit of tension in itself. If I were to suggest anything, and you guys as a whole have made it hard for me to find items to suggest, the two would be trying to see if you could either find a different stock so you could shoot straight on and get it more even around here. But the other piece I'm going to suggest is something I suggest rarely, and that is a very gentle vignetting on here to just kind of bring that focus in toward that center a little bit. You don't need this bright here, but again, you don't want to do it so it's obvious. You just want to lead the eye in toward that center. Otherwise, I find this image very enjoyable to see. And I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Hi, this is Cami. Thank you for your input. This was a photo I took actually a while ago before I really started doing any editing in Photoshop. So I didn't even think about doing the vignette, but that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. This is actually the endangered species of lupine in Pennsylvania. We happen to have them on our property.
Interesting. I didn't even know Pennsylvania had a native version of it.
Yes, it's incredibly rare.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for that info. Okay, next image, another one straight on. Beautiful image right off the bat. It's like, I mean, I've been in this in the Capitol building many times. I've looked up many times. This photographer has caught this image very, very well. I love the symmetry, and yet it's not quite. And that's just because of the structure of the building. You have, you know, this here that isn't mirrored at the top piece. And so, you know, there is this piece that I really like about it. The bottom corners don't match quite the top corners, which to me adds to the photo. It adds interest, more varied in the structure. So when I'm looking at this color-wise, lighting-wise, I think it's a very, very fine photo. So the photographer has done a great job in capturing it. I do have one suggestion here, and it felt like almost sacrilege to suggest anything of this photo because it was so well done. But the 4 medallions, I would very carefully try to darken them just a bit. The text in them is in some places actually readable. And if you darkened a little bit, it would let that text come out, and someone viewing it, especially depending on how large it's printed, may actually be able to read some of that. But it would get a better sense that there really is text there and not texture. And that would be, for me, the only real suggestion I would give, because there's just so much in this picture that I could spend a lot of time pointing, oh, I like this, I like that, I like this. I love the photograph, and I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Thanks, Chip. That's me, Kurt Wilkie. And
Nice.
yeah, I think I like your suggestion of darkening those up. The sunlight kind of gets those, and they're a little
Yeah.
washed out. So yeah, I'll work on that, see what it does.
Okay,
Thank
and you want to be careful with it because nothing else would hint at being darker, so you have to find that middle ground because of that light, but I think it would help.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing it. Baron, this is almost a classic Pennsylvania pastoral scene. And it's got a little of everything in it that makes this a very nice and workable scene from the viewer standpoint. I love the ridges from the corn. I assume that's corn here, but it's kind of like leading us into the picture. There's just this nice balance of the buildings here with a structure over here. In this case, a tree. One's bigger than the other, but it works. And it doesn't overpower this. It just provides a nice balance. But besides the lines going in, there's lines leading us to that tree. So we really can't miss it. It's part of the main subject, and at the same time, the lines are leading to it. Color's very nice. It's a great time of evening, capturing the sunset. And to me, I just think you were very fortunate to get this kind of V shape leading down into this corner, which kind of gives us a spotlight on this section here. I think that might be a pond and then the building. And so, and then the coloring itself, again, is very complementary with the blues and the oranges or coral colors. To suggest anything, again, it was kind of hard. I like the foreground that's right there in front of us. I really wouldn't personally want to crop anything there. I could see some people suggesting that. I think I would avoid it if possible. But right in here in the yellows, if you can, you're going to have to be very careful with it. A very feathered brush and very gently. I would probably darken that a little bit. It just feels a little too bright for the overall scene. But otherwise, I don't think I'd touch anything on here. I like the image. I think you've done it well. The photographer, I'm sorry. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Well, hi, Chip. This is George Kurzik. That's my image.
Thank you, George. And where is it?
That's taken in Hellam.
Okay,
Just actually just off Route 30.
all right. So on the south side of 30.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's a church about a mile from my house, and they have this tree about 200 yards behind it. So I'm there all the time looking for this.
Okay, can you see this from the highway?
In a wince.
Oh, okay. I pass this area, I suspect, often, because I get off at the Wrightsville exit from York, going to visit a daughter and son-in-law and their family often. So I'd have to get off the road to see it. Okay, but thank you. Nice image.
Thanks for the comments, Chip.
You're welcome. Hanging out, tree sloth, and indeed he hanging there, and it's a very nice image. Anytime you have you're capturing wildlife, you want to see a sharpness in the face, and clearly it's sharp in here. The eyes, I kept wondering, are we quite sharp enough? But I think so, actually. If you wanted to do anything to it, you could just sharpen just the eyes. Everything else is sharp. I love the fact you could see the details in the hair and each individual hair within that. So it's very nice. It's there in front of us. You know, it's not off center. It's where it should be for me for this whole piece. The structure around it, I kept trying to ask myself, was this like just leaves in the way that kind of give you that soft, diffused look there, or was that purposefully added in? The photographer will get to tell me that, but it felt like there was too much of that. I would almost want to be cropping down just a little bit in here. And because it feels like too much of it. And I don't believe the image would be hurt. I actually think it'd be strengthened. It would be more in your face. And I think this kind of image screams to be in your face. You want to see that amazing animal, because they are. I see videos of them, and you know, you always have this idea of as slow as the sloth. Well, clearly they are, but they seem incredibly gentle. So I'd love to hear where you captured this image, and anything else you want to share from the photographer.
Hi, Marlene McNamara. I
Hey,
was in
Marlene.
Costa Rica and he was up high in a tree.
Okay, so this is in the wild, not in a zoo.
Nope.
Awesome. And this green then, is that just greenery that was there?
Yes.
Okay, I kept wondering, and the only thing I'd suggest is trying to crop in a little bit. You maybe don't need it all.
I can try it and see what it looks like.
And that would be up to you then to decide which you like best. But it's a very nice image.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Strumming on the old banjo. Maybe everybody already knows this. I always marvel that the banjo is really the only what we would call truly North American instrument. Most everything else was created elsewhere, although banjos have partial origin in the Caribbean as well. But that being said, I love the face on this. There's kind of this very contemplative joy. This guy is just in his zone. And I love his face is nice and sharp, just this wildness in here. You know, I love the choice of black and white. It fits for it. The background is not in any way, to me, obtrusive. So it's a very nice capture. It's up close. I don't mind that part of the banjo is not there, because that brings us in with the player. We're right there with them. If I had a suggestion, well, I do have a suggestion. I shouldn't say it that way. It would require you going back, and I don't know what opportunity that will give you. I actually feel, because this is such a strong, go back. image overall, I would love to see it sharp all the way through the player and his banjo. The hand, you know, it's moving, his structure of it is, but it just feels blurred and not because of movement. If there was movement, there'd still be a sharpness about it, or could be a sharpness about it, and you'd have this streaking, so to speak, that would give the movement. That would have been okay. But I just would love to see the whole thing. I'm kind of air playing a banjo right this second. But outside of that, it is a very nice image. And again, I'm really glad that you chose black and white for this. And I'd love to hear from the photographer and where you were when you took it.
Hey, Chip, Don Uvick.
Hey, Don.
Hey, so I looked at the hand too. I regrettably I didn't take as many. I mean, I took some shots. I can't remember how many, but this one was the best of the barrel of the group. Now, I took this a couple years ago. I keep actually where it is, and I think it might be a trip that the club might do. It's a little bit of a drive. Somerset County, actually Somerset, Pennsylvania, has a mountain
old-
craft day in
Oh,
September.
okay.
And it's fantastic. I mean, it's in the backwoods. You can see people in a colonial kind of garb from all
Yeah.
different types of communications and making barrels and sauerkraut and you name it. But that's where I had taken this particular image. This group comes back every year, but I haven't been able to capture something like this. And I
Yeah.
appreciate the fact that you caught that thing with the hand. I'm sharp throughout the entire image. I'm just surprised that was blurred. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't understand what happened, but yes, I wish I could retake that and do it. And I'll like I said, it might be a trip. I'll have to talk to the trip committee about it. Because it's fantastic. Every year I go back and always come up with a new shot. So
and you
thanks
said
again.
Somerset, PA.
Yep, Somerset, PA. And it's Mountain Craft Days. It's always in September. I think it's September the 6th this year is the one day. I don't know. I think it's one day. It might be the whole weekend. But anyway, it is definitely worth checking out. If not with a group, then individually.
Okay.
Thanks,
Good
Chip.
capture of the face. I love it. All right. Thank you. All right. First look. And I just have to get to my notes here a minute. Okay. I love, when anytime we see faces in a window, they clearly draw you in. It's rare to find someone who wouldn't be interested in seeing a face in the window. And this one, we have this young child, who's clearly seeing something. And I think both the woman here, I guess, with her phone and the child are looking at the same thing, or certainly look to be. And so there's this capturing it there. There's a third guy who's just looking away. So he's just enough to add texture to the structure of the image, but not draw our eyes there because his face is turned away. And so here is your primary subject. And then again, they're looking at something, and I think we have a hint of what they're looking at actually in this picture. For me, added intrigue. I don't think it was critical to be there, but you see this ghost. My guess is he's off over here and the reflection is caught on the window. And so we're getting a hint of what they're looking at. And for me, that just adds another level of intrigue to the whole image. Structurally, I like this angle, actually, that it kind of leads us across the image. This comes this way. So there's not quite a V, but there's a hint at that keeps us moving from left to right. And I like that. And we're not taken out of the picture because this kind of holds us in and we just come back into here. So I really like the image. If I were to make a suggestion, there I go with my ifs again. This structure piece right in here below the windows, I guess they are. I think I would drop the highlights very carefully. You don't want to do it too much. Just, I would try that first, actually, to bring in the texture. You could try the texture slider if you're working in Lightroom or if you have another editor that has a texture slider. But I think you're going to get it better out of just dropping the highlights a little bit. You don't want to darken it. You just want to let the lines that are clearly here stand out a little bit, just to add some more interest so it's not as washed out. And very carefully, I would darken this a bit. I thought about trying to find ways to crop it, but I think cropping, you're going to lose some interesting pieces of the photo that are, you know, a secondary interest, but nonetheless, I think they do add interest to the photograph. So I think you've captured it well, other than, again, highlights here, and I don't know, I would, again, try to a brush in there and try to darken it, but just not at 100% opacity. I would drop it down. I would probably start at 25, 35% and see how that looks and go from there. But it's a nice photograph. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Hi, this is Jean Martin.
Hi, Jean.
We took our grandchildren on the Santa train in Middletown and Hummelstown. And actually the reflection is Santa. And that's why
No,
I titled it First Look. So
awesome.
yeah, I'm thinking the lady with the red hair is Grandma. And so her and the granddaughter are looking at Santa there
Yep.
on the platform. So
Nice.
I wanted to crop that sky out. It was a really yucky day that day. And but like you said, every time I went to crop it, it just made it weird. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think your suggestion on taking the highlights on the metal part of the train there at the top would probably help too. So
Mhm.
thank you for your suggestion.
You're very welcome. All right, let's move on here. The odd and scary stairs. I was trying to find what was odd about it. You know, I haven't said much about titles, but I could, the scary part I could kind of see. I'd be a little bit afraid to go up them. It might fall or they'd break on me. So as an image, when you have something like this and you're looking and there's a window there and these steps, lighting can be difficult. And you've done a really nice job from an exposure standpoint. And so kudos to you on that. Structurally, the image is a little busy. I don't mind, you know, the posters here, whoop, again, the steps here and so on. This one, I don't know if you'd had to ask permission or had the guts to do it. I've been tempted to pick it up and pull it out as a picture. The other board, this one, or I think it's a board, you can't help. It's the anchor on the steps to keep it from, to add a little bit of steadiness to it. So that's there. Because it's there, though, you might want to move this to the right just a hair so you don't have this convergence piece. So there'd be a little bit of separation. I think that would have helped. There's a lot of other ways, I think, at this spot, and maybe you've done this. it's close, but I'd probably try to stand on that platform and see if I could get an image shooting up it. But I think more interesting would be getting behind the stairs and shooting through them to those posters, because those posters are very interesting. And they do, at the very least, balance almost a stair step fashion as well to the steps. They balance the steps, and there is kind of that steppy piece to it. At both sides, both the bottom and the top. So I'd love to be at this place because I could think of probably 1,000 different pictures I get out of it. And again, maybe you've done the same. So my only real suggestions would be to move the board if you can go back, and to shoot through the steps. I'd like to see how that works. You'd have to angle yourself just right. You probably want the Abbottstown through one of them at least, or the fair through it. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
That's from Mary Eileen Carson, and it was taken at the Heisman Mill, the field trip we took in last month.
Oh,
And yeah, I mean, we first walked in, and when I saw people going up those steps, it was kind of like,
oh, they really did go up. Okay.
yes, well, we didn't know. A little bit later, I discovered, and some other people discovered, there was a better staircase at the back of the building. But I kept looking at those steps saying, yeah, maybe I can get up. How will I get back down? I don't know that I want to be on them. So, but I was taking a number of shots of the stairs because I was also attracted to those posters. But
For sure.
I'm
Right.
sorry, go
I
ahead.
just said for sure. I would be too, and am.
So anyway, yeah, I maybe could take out that board through Photoshop. I'll try to see if I can and don't screw it up. And maybe some other time go back out and try
Right.
again. But thank you for the comments.
And you've done a nice job in the lighting.
Thank you.
That's not easy. You're welcome. Over, under, around, and through. I wrote this note. I said, every once in a while, I see a photo and can say, ah, somebody understands me. I love lines. I love very, very graphic images. And this one is just like, wow. And my guess is it's either, just a multiple in-camera shot, or it's a composite of some kind. And I'll be interested to hear how you got this, but that's not as important as the final image, which is has just this beautiful strong line here, and every line in it are kind of complementary to it in some fashion. They don't take away from it because it is such a strong image. The line here and then the steps themselves anchor it. And I love that. I love that there's this, I'm going to say, I think it's a railing. We'll find out when we hear from the photographer, but it provides kind of like another balance to the area down here where your eye is drawn. So like the image, you're not given a single place to rest. You want to just see it all. This in here that you see along here, this texturing, that I had two thoughts on it. One was it gives the image of text. The other is maybe it's a rug that is hinting at text in a photo like this. And so, but I love it. I think it's just an added piece to it. The place that I would love to see different would actually be the upper corner. It's almost too concrete for the rest of the image. There's lots of hints of stairs. There's here, you've got here, you know, even in here, I see that kind of okay. There are steps here. This seems too real for the rest of the photo. So I don't know if it's a composite, can you move something around so it's not quite like that, or add something on top, perhaps even something like this overlaid in here, which would give another balance. But even if you did nothing, I think this is a great photograph, and I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Thanks, Chip. That's mine, Chuck Hilburn. I
Nice.
think I had the exact same feeling that you had when I put this together. I took a single shot from up in the railing area, and that was the dark steps looking down at those. And then when I got underneath, I thought that was going to be a picture itself. When I got underneath of the steps, I looked back up and I thought, oh, it's just perfect contrast to the other steps because it's all white underneath, but it had these edges that were black, just like the railing going down. Underneath it had edges that were black. So I took it in and made a composite out of it, and it just came together perfect with the composite. I didn't want to manipulate it, but thank you for not chopping mine apart because of the edges. I thought that's where I was going to take a hit, because every time I submit one, you hit me on the edges.
Oh,
So I'll
very nice.
take the hit on the top there. I don't know what to do to get rid of that other than vignette it. I think that's another, let's see, that must be on the underside looking up. I'm not sure. I can't really analyze it. I have to go back and look at the originals because it's two pictures I put together.
Right.
And
Okay.
just came together perfectly in Snapseed. So it was just a double exposure put together.
Good. Okay. Don't vignette it. That would be my suggestion.
Oh,
Don't do
okay.
that.
I was just happy with the way it came out, and I thought, ah, perfect timing
Yeah.
for a submission. It's down at the Embassy Suites in Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Well, you should be happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
for sharing. Stillness. Another kind of classic nature scene in some ways. It's like we've got this creek. It's a place that at least I want to be. I've actually sat along creeks in the snow, much like this. So depending on the experience of a viewer, this image can certainly pull the heartstrings, if you will. I like that because when it's coming down like that, big flakes, it's generally pretty still, and the water kind of implies that as well. You're not seeing wind blowing it around. So that's very nice. I love the coloring. I'm going to guess, I think a photographer can tell me, but that it's just straight natural color, considering the time of year, the snow. At first I thought, well, maybe it's two-toned, but you do see a little bit of brown tucked in here on the left. And then a little, if you really look, you can see it tucked in here. So I like the naturalness that this photo provides. What it lacks, and it will lack depending on the viewer, I believe, is more of a specific subject. The image is the subject in this case. And for some, they could look, well, okay, that's nice. So you have this contrast that's going to be based on the viewer. Someone's going to say, I really like this because I either want to be there or I've been at places like that and I want to go back. I would fall in that category. Then you're going to be those that are going to critique this and say, where is the subject? Creek leads us into the image, and then we get stopped by that. And some people would say, well, there needs to be something more to stop us. I don't know. I don't know if I could call it a great image, but it's an image that I personally like for all the reasons that I've said. And I'd love to hear from the photographer. Not here today?
I don't think she's here. It was Joan Smith that did it.
Okay, we'll move on. From the ground up, and that title, again, I haven't said a lot about titles, but it can come from two places to me. The trees themselves from the ground up, and from where we're standing from the ground looking, feels like looking up somewhat, not just down a field, but up a field. Like there's a rise there. So I think the title actually works here. The tree line itself, for me, works because of this and this. It provides a balance that if they were all more uniform in height, now you got a nice high one here and a little bit higher here and here. But generally, there's just this line of trees, but our eyes are kept down into this structure in here because of this tree and maybe this partial tree. I don't know exactly what that is. But it's nice. It's a simple image. And yet there's something interesting in it. Color-wise, I like that it's really light, allows for the silhouetting to stand out. And I could see somebody screaming about, hey, this needs to be cropped. Let's just come across the bottom here and leave the top third of the corn maybe, and you have this nice panoramic. It might work, but I think there's something to say about leaving the whole piece, except that I would crop part of the green, about half out, this dip in here. I would crop just above it, see how that works. I can see if you did crop it there, maybe it would feel like not enough, and then I'd back off a little. But I don't think I'd leave it all. Because we want to be there, and too much green, I think, is pulling us back a little bit. But some, because it's layer, we've kind of got this layer of trees, and then the layers in the clouds. And that just all adds to us falling into that image. So for the kind of image it is, I think you've done well, other than I'd suggest cropping a little bit at the bottom. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Thanks for the critique. Yeah, what really stood out to me when I was driving through the countryside was just the layers that you mentioned. To me, it's just I really enjoy the rule of thirds in my photography. I know some people don't, but I really do. And to me, the green, the brown, and then the sky are almost perfect thirds.
You're right. It's nice. Where is this, Alex?
This is out near the Williams Grove Speedway,
Okay.
off of, what is that, Lisburn Road,
Yep.
and then Speedway Drive, I think, out that way.
Okay. All right. I'll have to take a trip out there. I'm always looking for trees on the edge there on the horizon. Nice image. You got it at a nice time of evening or morning. I don't know which.
Morning.
I was gonna
Thank
say,
you.
as I'm saying it, it's gonna be morning because of where it's at, right? Okay, thank you. All right, inside the Oculus, a building that I'm sure many of you have been to, the others that haven't, I recommend if you get a chance, go there. This is proof of the kind of structure that provides all kinds of opportunities for photography and just is an amazing building to look at, both in and out. I like the inside better than an outside personally, but it's, you know, it's a fascinating building by a architect that has done some amazing work around the world. And he seems to like white. This building, there's lots of white. And that's one of the things I want to say about this image. You don't see lots of white. And I really like that. I mean, there's lots of grays and there's all this contrast and there's white there, but you don't get a sense that all those fins, if you will, these lines are as white as they really are. And because it can be tempting to present that. And I think you've done a very nice job of not presenting that part of it and letting us see just the structure and not be captured by all the whiteness here. This coming down, obviously the lens you have is provided this arc, which is really nice. And this nice anchor on the, there's stairway and observation kind of decking right here where you can look down in. And it's a building you can go a gazillion places and get all kinds of shots. I think you've captured a very powerful image here. And there's that if I'm going to suggest it, let's just put it that way, you can see under here, there is some texture. I think I would lighten it a little bit more, not too much. You don't want to bring it up to this level by any means, but just enough that it doesn't feel like this dark void that our eyes want to go to, that isn't balanced out. I would try to find the balance with this and something along here in lighting. And I think if you did that, it would be a near perfect image for me. I just love it. And, you know, just enough you can see in here that it's windows, clear windows. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Thanks, Chip. It's Elaine Shook. I
Hey.
agree with you. The inside of the Oculus is really much more impressive than the outside. There are just so many opportunities to capture different perspectives and different lines and different curves. It's an amazing place. The day that I was there, it was very, very bright. And so there was a lot of reflected light on the already very bright walls and ceiling.
Right.
And so it was like standing in this very high key environment with absolutely no contrast. So I purposely underexposed it, and even in post reduced the brightness to bring out the clarity and the definition in those lines to provide some contrast, because without that, it was just very, very washed out, and you could not see the definition in
Right.
this architecture, which is the amazing part of it. I did actually lighten the bottom of that balcony before I submitted this, but apparently not enough. I'll attempt to lighten that up a bit more to balance out the tonality a bit.
Yeah,
But
just a bit, not too much. It's a very nice image, Elaine.
thank
And-
you.
And for anybody else that's been in here, you could spend a long time in this building as long as you don't go in the shops. The pricing of things in the shops will scare you away. But thanks for sharing, Elaine. What's a mother to do? This title works with this image. I mean, it's like there's this frenetic, it's a still image. You're not seeing movement, but you're feeling it. It's very frenetic, and the eyes on these birds are always like wild anyway, and it just adds to this mother feels overwhelmed. The eye gives us, I mean, it's I forget the word that we're added, human emotions or thoughts toward non-human things, especially inanimate, but I think inanimate, we can get away with that too. And we want to do that here because we feel for this mother. I do. I have a daughter with 5 kids, 16 through 8, and I go there and I'm like, how do you do it? So, and some days I think she looks like that, and this one, having the beat right on the mom, it's just adds to this. So it's a great capture, and there's nothing else in the way. There's just enough green to provide an anchor for us. And I love that it's just this blue in the back. It's sharp where we need to be sharp. We get to see these faces nice and clear. And so it's a near perfect image for what it is to me. I would make one suggestion. This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the photographer can, I don't think it's a perfect square, but I think it should be. I think just a bit off this top could go away to make it that perfect square. And then you would have just a stellar image to me. I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Hi, Chip. Jan Williams, that's mine.
Hey, Jan.
And I thank you for the comments about the square. I did not think about that. And I mean, I'm always fussing with how much is enough to take it down, take
Right.
it out, take it in, do, whatever. And I also appreciate your comments about the green, because I was kind of wishing that there was a little more, because this nest sat right in the middle of a tree that obviously I could not get to. So I'm shooting from a dock, and these birds just appeared out of the nest, sticking up out of the middle of the tree. And so I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe there should be more green, but I don't have a way to add it. I don't use Lightroom. So I appreciate your comments very much. It was fun taking these. I probably shot 200 pictures that day.
Good. Yeah, I think you've got the green just right. And something I hadn't commented on. I mean, the photo, we know exactly what it is, but at first glance, there's a hint of the abstract. And being a square, that would just add to that. It would go, oh, it would be jarring at the very first. And then we're looking, it's like very cool. So thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you, Chip.
Portugal Monastery Village 2020. This image is, when I see it, it looks like, I mean, the title tells me it's a European village. Without it, I think I would still think that. And I love the coloring. It gives a sense of the old, and the coloring, the way it's done, gives this implication of like old postcards that were then hand tinted. Before being printed, the picture would be hand tinted. That's the feel I get here. And it works very well with this image for me. The cars are indistinct enough at first glance that you're not pulled back into the 21st century as soon as you see the picture. You have to look a little more, and that's okay then. You can say, all right, yeah, there's cars here, but they were smaller and just dark enough that they weren't in the way of the photo. It almost added to this old sense of age to it. I love, just the post here, and then they're mirrored at the front as well. And so we've got these triangles going on that leads us this way and that way. And the starkness of the trees for the time of year, it looks kind of wet and cold. I like that starkness of it. I kept wondering though, where'd the leaves come in here, back here, when here? So maybe the photographer can help me there. Maybe it's an evergreen, I don't know. Or it just looks like leaves. The suggestion I would make, I would either darken the white here, it's just a little too bright for the rest of the image, or crop it in. But if you cropped it right here, you're going to have this little piece. I think I would prefer that you leave it and just darken down this white in there. The other piece that I would suggest is, I'm assuming these are clouds. I think I would clone them out. That it's kind of in the way of this image overall, because I think, you know, it just kind of pulls our eye just a little bit to that upper right corner, and you really don't want that. You want our eye to kind of, whoop, again, hang around in here. I'm giving everybody previews of next shots coming up. But I like this image, and I think you've treated it very well color-wise. So I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Thanks, Chip. This is Carla Maddox. And yes, when we visited Portugal, we had just walked out of the monastery there, and it had rained and it had stopped. And the light on the sidewalk just kind of drew me down the street.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it. And I think your suggestion's great. Cloning out the clouds and then darkening that building. I tried to take that building out and it just didn't look right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I would agree.
yeah, darkening it would work. So
Right.
thank
Okay.
you very
Thanks,
much.
thank you for sharing. What's behind door number 1? The title itself is fine. Oh, there's only one door, so I just wondered about that piece in the title. Normally, when we see an image like this, where there's these framing and a door, I tend to think of ones that are done, maybe because this is what I've done, they're like more in abandoned buildings. This one's a much more modern one, and I actually like that. Because it's not the norm, it's kind of a, on one sense, you'd call it a pretty generic hallway piece with a very standard door. But I like that it's this and not something old. I like the fact that it's just nice straight lines. You've done a nice job in making everything straight there, along even in here. Colorings are muted. I like that. And there's a hint, because it is more modern, and these squares, there's a hint for me of a painter's, the painter Rothko. If you're not familiar with him, you're going to go, wait, it's not the same at all. And I'm not saying it's the same. I get a hint of that out of this picture. Rothko tends to use very bright or dark, contrasty kind of items overall in his work. If you don't know his work, check it out. Just type Rothko, Rothko, in Google, and you'll see all kinds of what I consider some beautiful work. But this has a hint of that. And I like that you took something sort of mundane and made it interesting, just the way you've cropped it and the lines. So I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Yeah, Chip, it's Jim Browninger. I like to play around with minimalist photography. And I was dropping my wife off for an appointment at the UPMC outpatient center up there in Technology Ave, and I knew the lobby. had a lot of interesting things to shoot. So I brought the camera, captured several minimalist shots. I put this in here to get feedback on what you thought. So
Well, I think you did a nice job. I actually did have a suggestion that I didn't mention, I forgot. Real quick, like the suggestion would be to try to lighten the shadows.
okay.
So it's more uniform.
Yeah, I saw the shadow, particularly at the bottom of the blue there in the bottom left. And
Right, right. But even up in here and here a little bit, and if you're striving for that minimalist perspective, you'd want to lighten those and try to even it out with the rest of the image, but very nice. And I love the fact that you were intentional and took your camera to someplace like that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Outlier. Oh, I love this photograph. I love just the kind of, I want to say softness, but it's not quite right. But there's this painterly touch to it that I really like. The title works really well because it gives us a hint, but in my mind doesn't say who. I see three outliers right off the bat, or at least could be interpreted that way. I see clearly she's not with the rest of the group. She's bending down. Her hair color, body structure doesn't match anybody here. She's an outlier. This guy right here has got this almost stoic face, no shirt. The others have shirts. So there's another outlier there. There's probably argument for some others. I wouldn't call them outliers, but I think they add interest. The face here and a face here, it's like we know that we assume this is a marathon, but we have no idea where. Looking at these faces, you could almost think European. I hope someone doesn't beat me up for, for some kind of standardizing of people's faces, but there's something about it that feels European, and that's sort of that painterly effect as well. I think you've left enough up here. I would be careful if you can in here to try to drop some of the noise that I feel is in here, or maybe that's some of the effect that's giving me the painterly here that's doing something different up there. I'm not sure. A photographer can help me with that. From a cropping standpoint, I would love to have seen the shoulder here because we get to see the shoulder on this guy, and that would just balance that part out. I think I would crop just a little higher. Now, some people are going to yell at me because it's tough when you're cropping legs at any place. But I think I would do that and leave this a mystery all the more. We don't need to know. It looks like maybe she's grabbing something. I think I would just crop that just a little bit again, not a lot. Very interesting photo. I'd love to hear the background on it, and I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Hey, Chip, Rich Scar.
Hey, Rich.
How you doing, Chip? Thanks for your comments. Yeah, it's this is like shooting, and Jen Williams knows this is like shooting a group of birds as well. Where you're going to crop it, and you cut some things off. This is what I consider the adult version of Where's Waldo. I've taken a number of these crowd shots where you need to be a certain distance from them so they're not looking at you. They're involved in their own stuff, but close enough so you get a good kind of resolution on it. And I like those shots where if you get them at that angle, then there's no anonymity in it. You can character individuals, so it absorbs, I think, the reader and the whole thing. So I really like these. So thanks for your comments.
Well, you're very welcome. It's a very interesting photo. And
it was taken, excuse me, I took it in Tallahassee at
Oh, is
a
that where?
Thanksgiving, Tallahassee, Florida, Thanksgiving race.
Interesting. Okay. Lots of stories in the faces.
I assume that the woman on the left is maybe she's a teacher and she brought her whole class. They let her run.
That could be. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Inflation. Great title for what you're trying to accomplish here. So we've got this magnification of Queen Elizabeth on a Canadian dollar bill. And structurally, it's very nice. I like that you've put the pennies here. We've got the tails on the one for sure. Kind of, just at a little bit of an arc sent here, which kind of contrasts the downward angle here. So I think it seems to me that you were very purposeful in what you were trying to do. And I really like that piece of it. I like that this is here, and I don't know whether that's some kind of a magnifying glass or it's a coaster or a paperweight, whatever it is. It doesn't matter as much as it provides this very interesting piece. And yet, this is pretty sharp in here. So it's really nice, sharp in here, and yet sharp in here as well. Continued again, sharp here. We know there's a different distortion here, which adds interest. It doesn't take away from it. From a suggestion standpoint, since you as a photographer were clearly so purposeful, I would like not to see this corner and that corner cropped off. It's inflation, so we don't want to see any part of it gone. And besides that, just structurally, I really would like to see that for sure. I think most people viewing it, it could just be a little bit of a distraction. And otherwise, it's a very nice image. And I'd love to hear from the photographer.
Hey, Chip, Dave Marchetto, thanks so much.
Okay.
I was going to go with the presidents and really decided that foreign currency is much more interesting. It's colorful.
Right.
Queen Elizabeth is so much more photogenic than Thomas Jefferson. I put her, she's on the coin on the far left looking up at herself.
Right.
So I wanted to put that. It's actually it is a magnifying glass. It's the kind you would put over a coin or a stamp.
Mm-hmm.
And it pulls in a specular highlight from no matter where you're photographing. It's just a magnet for specular highlights. And the other thing that was just interesting, since I'm talking about it, is the optics of that are just really not good. So depending on where you place the magnifying glass, you can get some pretty wonky images, especially of a female portrait. So that was probably the biggest challenge, is to get it so that I had no pun intended, but a shot at Queen Elizabeth. And the actual coins, it's a Queen Elizabeth theme. The outer coins are British, and the Canadian nickel is in the middle. I just think the foreign currency is just so much more interesting. It's colorful. It has the currency, and the coins have beasts and all kinds of strange things. And anyway, that's why I chose. As far as the cropping goes, Chip, I absolutely shot loose enough on this so that I can go back and certainly take a look at what you did. The only thing I would say, because I looked at it long and hard, I liked this better because it was more up close and personal. But that's kind of why I did it. It sort of worked for me, but I could see why you would say, the cropping is problematic.
Okay, thank you for sharing, and I really appreciate. I love hearing when photographers are purposeful, and you argued why maybe not cropping, or opening it up because you want to be in on it. And just how you structured this, including Queen Elizabeth, looking at Queen Elizabeth, which I had thought about when I first saw it, and I didn't write it in my notes. So thank you for bringing that out.
Thanks for your comments,
very
Chip. I
nice
really
image.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, Misty Fjord. And the title tells, I say it tells me, I make this assumption again, that we're in Norway. I certainly can imagine it being in Norway with the tall pines, along with what I'd expect on the sides of if you're going down a fjord with it. So in that sense, I love being out in the country. I love being at a place where, especially high mountains, and it's kind of rainy. I had a couple of days when I was in Glacier some years back that were sort of like that. And there's this, like in this image, sort of the mist, the lower clouds, and yet not all the way down to the ground. And that's sort of the sense I get of this image, which always makes me, man, I'd like to be at that place. So I'm glad the photographer got there. When I look at this image, it feels soft. And I really struggled with whether that was the fault of the clouds just softening everything, or is it really not as sharp as it could be? I landed on the side not as sharp as it could be, because it is clear enough down in here and these places, there's places that I thought there's not enough mist to make it blurry. So I know this is a place that's probably you don't get to every day, but if you ever get a chance to go back, I would try to be careful and shoot this as sharp as you can. But recreating that atmosphere, we don't get to pick those with that. So structurally, it's there's no subject. It is the subject when you get to a place like that. You have to assume the photographer means the whole scene. I would like to see if you're going to, you could choose accept it as is. I think I would recommend trying to sharpen it a little bit, not too much, because I don't know if it could bring it in sharp enough, but it might allow us to feel like, oh, I'm seeing actual pieces in this image. Like I'm seeing a tree, not just the tree. So I could choose to look at a tree and say, oh, it's sharp there. I can see that. It might be hard to do, but I'd kind of recommend that. And maybe I'm hesitating here. I have a note here about cropping, a piece off the top, just because there's almost too much white. That actually is part of the nice part of the photo. It's sort of this abstract piece in there, and take too much away and you lose that. It feels it's like there's a bright spot in here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but both my laptop and the monitor that I have here are both showing that little bit of brightness in here. That it's going to be hard to marry it up with the rest, but I think I would try. And along with, there's a little piece in here that's bright. I'd love to hear where you're at, how you got there, what the situation was when you took the photo from the photographer. Are they not here either?
I don't see Norbert's listed anywhere. It was Norbert Fries.
Oh, okay. Just curious, does anybody know, was Norbert in Norway?
He was.
Oh, lucky him. Okay. The last one, flower and drop. So we open these images with a flower and we're going to close it with a flower. And both of them are just images that grab you right off, coloring wise. And they're actually pretty different in spite of some similarities in the blues being in there. I love this image in that it is mostly out of focus. We get some focusing in here. There's actually hints of sharpness at different spots. If we look, we've got this piece kind of coming into focus out here that's coming toward us, obviously a little bit from where it's at. But the rest is soft and it works. It adds interest. And this is just a beautiful softness and blending of colors that doesn't pull our eye away from the subject and isn't nothing either. It just adds to this image in a way that's really hard to explain, other than it's beautiful on its own and provides the blending, and you've anchored it on this side. So we've got a color matching in here over here, and that really frames this in and adds value to over here because it's here as well. So it's a very nice image. I'd love to hear what kind of flower it is. We'll get to that in a minute from the photographer. I have a suggestion, even though I think there's very few things to suggest on this photo. This would be a very easy crop out in this upper left-hand corner. I would strongly suggest just losing that and just allowing this to come all the way up in. But I'd love to hear from the photographer on this image. No bums, we're not going to hear from
Yeah,
this one either.
maybe not, Chip. That was done by Chris Scott.
Okay, nice image. I love the fact that this series opened and closed with flowers. I don't know how they get chosen and put in order, but I loved that it was that way. It was just a pleasant surprise.
Very nice, very nice.
Oh.
Thanks, Chip.
You're welcome, and that's
Really appreciate it.
all of them.
Okay.
Very good
Anybody-
evening, Chip. Thank you.
Well, thank
Anybody
you.
have any questions or comments?
Oh, I can share those back if you do.
I don't hear anybody, so I wouldn't worry about it, Chip.
Okay.
Always very thoughtful and constructive. So good to get you to look at these, Chip.
Thank you very much. I
Very
appreciate it.
enjoyable too. Okay, the next meeting is gonna be Monday, February 26th. Again, Bert Serkin on keeping your photography fresh. And with that, if there's no other questions or comments, the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, Chip.
You're
Thanks,
very
Chip.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Chip.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have a great evening.